Welcome to a new series where I pedantically overanalyze some of the best and sometimes worst background art that rhythm games have to offer. Why? Because I can. And just how I think the music of rhythm games is very underappreciated, I'm of the belief that background art is even more so. That being said, let's start off with perhaps one of the cleanest and most interesting background arts I've ever seen come from the BMS scene. Lyrith. The animation to Lyrith was done by the stellar Optie Animation, with illustration credit being given to Haruka Ichiro, and the song, contrary to what most people believe, was actually mainly composed by a small composer called Yume Mido, and Leaf was the one who arranged it. Unless Yume Mido is Leaf? I tried triangulating for any evidence of the hypothesis, but ultimately couldn't find any confirmation of this. So I'm just going to treat Yume Mido as a separate entity and say make sure to support them as well. Anyways, Lyrith was introduced to the world in the BMS of Fighters Ultimate 2017 and took that competition by storm, gaining 5th place in the rankings and being a major reason as to why Leaf was able to practically solo a BMS of Fighters with only 2 songs. I firmly believe that the song wouldn't have done anywhere near those numbers were it not for this BGA though, so let's get into it. The video starts with a fade from black to a blurred scene as classical sounding violins and what sounds like a clock ticking takes the lead. The image slowly unblurs to reveal a girl staring inquisitively into a mirror. Well, I say that, but in reality, the mirror is blurred as well, so we don't get a proper gaze of the reflection staring back just yet. That is, if it is a reflection, as supposedly implied by the abrupt glitch in sound and the words that flash on screen for just a few frames. Who are you? It reads in red. And now we get a proper look at the reflection. Our main character of the show, Alma. According to the Robeats wiki, it seems legit, I guess. If I were to describe this look best, I say my hunch earlier was right. It looks as if she just finished asking that very same question to the reflection out loud. Who are they? The music then slowly begins to build up as the camera pans out and the gaze on the girl seems to suddenly get hazy. As this happens, the mirror also gets brighter and suddenly the screen is completely taken over by a blinding flash of light, only to immediately fade to black. Actually, you can see a cloud of static slowly take over the screen, only to then be swept away by this. Where the heck did that mirror go? Almost like she opened a trap chest in Elden Ring. Suddenly, she's transported in front of a breathtakingly complex castle-like building. This building's architecture is so complex, so nonsensical in its nature, and so fucking massive that it almost feels like a labyrinth. As if the video acknowledged the shock that the watcher and the girl just felt. A myriad of strange fractals and symbols take over, which, I'm gonna be honest with you, whenever I see this in the BMS BGA, I always wonder what was in the mind of the creator when they decided to do this. It looks cool as hell, but it's given seizure. But anyways, it looks like it's a labyrinth in the literal sense too, filled with dead ends, loops, and paths that could stretch beyond the passage of time itself. Rightfully so, the girl is overridden with fright. Sweat drips down her face from the anxiety, and her pupils dilate into spirals from the sheer shock. What the fuck just happened? She's probably thinking. Well, the answer to that probably won't come for a while, and the only option she has is to explore this newfound place. As the stairs twist and turn, with one set of them actually twisting in sync with the piano. Pretty cool, right? We are greeted to the entrance, and thus begins the quest to explore the labyrinth and escape. The name of the song is then introduced. The word labyrinth flashes on screen with the kanji for it being displayed behind it in a similar fashion, and the full name of the song is then displayed. Lyrith, Meikyu Ririsu, or translated, Lyrith, Labyrinth Lilith. Followed by the trippiest transition I've ever seen, Alma begins exploring the dungeon, with the violin melody reflecting the act of her moving very slowly and deliberately, making sure to check every nook, every cranny, every corner. Alright, what the fuck was that? Unbeknownst to Alma, someone or something seems to be watching her every move. I really like the extra stutter effect in the music to emphasize the appearance of the apparition, and it immediately lets us know that this thing is not something that's comprehensible by humans. It doesn't seem like Alma notices though, and she just keeps walking. Man, look at her face. That's the face of someone that's gone 0 days without nonsense. And then, as the music prepares for another drop, it seems like Alma finds a weapon, a knife whose blade is separated into sections, with one section being further away from the middle piece than the section near the hilt. If anything, this serves as a reminder that the current world we're in is supernatural in nature, such that the natural laws of physics don't apply here. Otherwise, I have no clue about the significance of this. Either way, it looks pretty fucking cool. With this, Alma gains a newfound determination. Although she's still anxious, she has the courage to continue moving forward, despite the impossible odds. Besides, what other choice does she have? And so the journey begins. What I can only describe as a time lapse of her exploring this landscape is showing, but my god, this shit looks amazing. I envy the artists that are able to come up with landscapes as abstract as this and make it into a reality. I mean, look at this path. This is as if Minas Tirith and Rainbow Road had a baby. As you're in awe from the landscape shown to you, suddenly the music begins to break down and glitch again as an ominous summon circle appears. From this emerges the same entity we saw in the beginning. It now makes a full appearance. The guard of the labyrinth, it looks like, who I can only assume goes by the name Lyrith. Unfortunately, Alma is in the vicinity of this, and she's so scared by this sight that tears begin to well up in her eyes. Another brilliantly done expression of fear by Haruka Ichiro, and even though it only appears for about half a second, this and the sudden gasp of air the song makes tells us all we need to know about what's about to happen. We are getting the fuck up out of here. And so, Alma runs for what seems like an eternity, consumed by fear and with tears rolling down her eyes. The music reflects the feeling of desperation felt by Alma, and the video occasionally glitches into sequences like this, just to make the experience a tad more nerve-wracking. I really want to emphasize what seems like an eternity. For all we know, she could have ran for only a couple of minutes in the real time, but it still feels like a ridiculous amount of time. And the amount of distance she actually covers is further emphasized by this monstrosity of a sequence. All these windows make a corridor. All these windows make a corridor. All these spirals make stairs. Who knows? But clearly, they really want you to take in how long this girl must have been running for dear life for. And before you even have time to comprehend that, a blinding light once again engulfs the screen, and the scene transitions to an exhausted Alma hiding from a predator. She conducts one final check to her right, and after confirming that no one is there, breathes a sigh of relief. She can finally take a break from all the running. Perhaps calm down a little bit and think of a plan out of here. Or so she thought. Oh, I admire the girl for having it in her to continue running, because if I were her, after looking up and seeing something like that, I know damn well I'm accepting my fate. Are those hands? Are those spider legs? Is that hat alive? Suddenly, the fear Alma experiences is heightened and amplified. She continues to find any way out, and while this happens, we get close-ups of the Guardian of the Labyrinth in intervals. Upon further inspection, it does seem like that hat is alive. And with that being said, this character design is as cool as it is creepy. It does seem to have changed from before as well, whereas only half of her face seems to be engulfed by this red, void-like substance. Now, her entire face is taken over, to now look like something straight out of a creepypasta. Interesting. As these close-ups happen periodically, the music also slowly starts to get more intense and climax, given the heart-wrenching effect that this thing is gaining on Alma. But thankfully, luck is on her side. What looks like an exit of some kind is visible not far from here. All she has to do is cross this platform and... oh brother. Yeah, she was really cornered this time. Alma turns around and faces the monster, realizing in that moment, this could be the end for her. Frozen from fear, she watches as a giant hand from the Guardian, which answers my question from earlier, reaches out and grabs her, lifting Alma up against the full moon. As her life seemingly flashes before her eyes, she realizes something. Wait a second, don't I have a shank? And so, this was it, her final stand. With all the courage left in her, she unsheathes her blade, and we pan onto an interesting shot. Lyrith looks significantly deformed. She has no eyes, and she appears to be melting. In fact, if we go back to some earlier shots and stare closely, you can see drips of that black and red ooze dripping from her face, implying she's been melting this whole time. What could this mean? Well, it didn't matter to Alma. Survival was the only thing on her mind, and with all her strength, she plunged the knife straight into... herself? I'm gonna be honest with you, that was the ultimate plot twist when I first watched this. And there has been many different interpretations about what this means and how this affects the overarching plot of the animation. A lot of people say things like, oh, the labyrinth represents her mentality, and Lyrith is actually herself, and this animation represents her running away from her depraving mental state, and fear, and yeah, all that deep stuff. I mean, it makes sense after all. Remember that all this started with Alma asking a single question in the mirror. Who are you? Which implies she's questioning her sense of self, and therefore battling with her own inner demons. But I think it's a much simpler, and honestly, much less cheesy of a story than that. If you look at the description written for the song in the BOFU 2017 event page, it reads one sentence that translates approximately to, never ask, who are you, in front of a mirror, because Lyrith will lure you in. Immediately, it should be obvious as to what this animation actually is. This isn't some profound tale of a girl battling her own mental state to save herself from the S-word, but rather an equally as tragic one, telling the tale of a girl who fell victim to the witch who goes by the name of Lyrith. Lyrith seems to be a supernatural entity who's capable of trapping her victims in a hallucination of some sort, upon them saying that magic phrase under the right conditions. And unfortunately, Alma was one of possibly many people that fell right into her trap card. It's very similar to the whole Bloody Mary thing, where when you say Bloody Mary enough times in front of a mirror, she would appear or something like that. Except, Lilith has a far worse fate awaiting anyone who falls for such a simple trap. In fact, I think something that really gets the same vibes as this story, but is told in a lot more depth, particularly in the perspective of the victim, is the various stories around SCP-106. For those that don't know, SCP-106 is a black humanoid entity, don't take that the wrong way, that periodically would pull human victims into his pocket dimension and play with them. And by play, I mean hunted them down like prey over the course of an undefinable amount of time. It could be days, it could be months, it could be years, but all prey eventually has the same unfortunate demise as soon as they're captured. Certain death. The same thing happens here upon being lured by Lilith. She takes over your mind, causing you to hallucinate some alternate dimension with an enormous labyrinth, which can now be considered her playground, or I guess preyground. And here, she hunts you down like an animal over a period of an undefinable amount of time, toying with you throughout the whole process. Throughout the whole thing, she pretends to let her guard down. She pretends that she has a weakness. She pretends that the chase was taking away her strength, causing her to melt. Come on now. Did you really think that knife was there just as a coincidence? This was just a way for Lilith to give her prey some form of hope, some form of determination. Unfortunately for you, right when you think you won, you realize that the reality is, the battle was over before it began. I actually really enjoyed writing this, and you know what? I look forward to making more like it in the future. That depends on you guys though, so if you enjoyed, leave a like, and suggest some BMS you'd want me to overanalyze. Maybe subscribe, maybe follow me on Twitter, maybe join my Discord. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in a bit.